All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Paweł, and today I will tell you how to fight monsters in your projects. Maybe it won't be that scary. Don't worry. Let's start with the idea. Imagine that you are a private detective. You move back 100 years ago. You get a job to retrieve some documents from a mansion. The owner of a mansion disappeared in mysterious circumstances, right? You get the job from his family. You arrive at the scene. You see this beautiful old mansion. You get inside. What happens? The classical horror cliche happens. So the door closing behind you. You can't escape, right? But you think, all right, let's see what you can do. Let's find those documents. You get to the first floor, second floor. You find those documents, but in the process, you learn that the mansion is actually haunted. There are some monsters, some ghosts, some undead, dead bodies in the closet, some traps. Everything is out to get you, right? Tell me if it sounds somehow familiar. Okay, whenever you are in a project for years or you are just starting, you might have this idea that, okay, something is off, it's haunted, there are some monsters, there are problems, there are traps. Everything is out to get me, to eat me, to kill me, to hurt me, right? And now the question is, should you care? If you are in this haunted mansion, the actual haunted mansion is dangerous, right? You can be killed. But if you are in a software project, you are sitting in front of your keyboard, right? Sipping tea, eating cookies, right? What can go wrong? But in fact, if the project is really bad for you, if you are in a constant stress, right? If you're afraid that something bad is going to happen, if every day, if you think about getting up from your bed for work the next day, you think that, no, I don't want to go there, it basically has some effects on your mind, right? If it persists, it can really hurt you. You can get into burnout, into some serious mental diseases, depression, and in the end, it also has implications on your physical health. So in the end, the haunted project can kill you. So it's good to talk about this. A few words about me. I used to be a Java developer for roughly 12 years. Then some people in software development say that I moved to the dark side. I'm taking care of people currently, around 10 teams of mostly DevOps and Python folks at Xibia, Poland. This QR code here is the handle to my LinkedIn. If you would like to connect, high five, ask some private questions. If you have some strong NDA or something like this, you don't want to ask in a group. You're welcome to. I'm also on some other social media. There's this blog that has a Java in name, but please don't be scared. There's no Java for like 7 or 8 years there. I mostly write about general software development and peopleware actually in recent years. Also, slides from these presentations are somewhere there, and also there's a recording of a longer version, English version, Polish version. If you would like to get back to this or share with somebody, you're welcome to. So now, what's our plan? We'll start a bit philosophically, right? Let's ask the questions, what do we really want in life and also in our projects? Then we are going to explore this hunting guide. So we have a number of monsters, of problems that we can face in our projects, and let's see what we can do with that, okay? And there are some miscellanea at the end. If you don't know how to call the last chapter of presentation, miscellanea or general thoughts is always working. So what do we want? The philosophical question. There are those quite well known, probably. How many of you have read the Drive book by Daniel Pink? Yes, when I do this presentation for software developers, there's like one hand, maybe sometimes. Yeah, so this is a good book. It tells about 3 pillars of motivation, right? We would like to have the autonomy. So we would like to get in the boat, to row, to have some direction, speed, and see the results of where we are going, right? Then we have the mastery. So we like to be good at something, right? Especially in IT, people often have this passion for technology. They are very happy if they can learn something, master something. And also if somebody notices that we are good, makes us feel nice, right? Our ego is rising, right? And then the purpose. So we would like to do something that has some meaning, right? Not just move bytes from one place to another, or Jira task from one place to another, or Excel line or whatever, but think that we are doing something for the greater good, something that somebody will use, will be happy about this, and stuff like this. So those are the 3 pillars for motivation. And usually, when one of them is missing, or 2 of them, or even 3 of them at the same time are missing, then we don't feel good in life and in our projects, right? So now, looking from biology standpoint, what the organism can do if there's a stressor, right? There are 3 basic strategies. You can confront the stressor, right? So you can change something. You can fight the monster. You can try to change something in your project, in your company, to make yourself feel better, right? But sometimes it might be difficult or even impossible. So you can maybe accept this, adapt, right? So there is this monster, but let's say we can befriend the monster or somehow avoid the monster or pretend it's not there. And in the end, the effect is that if it's not a problem for us anymore, then it's good, right? The problem is still there, but it's not our problem, right? It doesn't make us sad, whatever. So this is the second strategy. And the third strategy is to escape, right? So you can throw the table, you can quit your job or your project if you can, and just leave it all behind. That's also a nice strategy. But the question is it always possible, right? Just as in Haunted Mansion, maybe there is some trap around the door. You can't open the door because it's somehow cursed. There is some ritual, some spell put on this, right? You have to do some shenanigans, maybe defeat some boss in the basement or something like that to escape. And in real life, it's kind of similar. Maybe you just bought a house and you have a mortgage. Maybe you have a child on the way, right? Maybe the market is not very good. Maybe you're scared, whatever. There might be a myriad of reasons why you don't want to quit your job, right? So because of this, I will try to focus on those 2 first strategies, how to fight with our monsters and how to tolerate our monsters. All right, so about changing something. Who of you have read the Switch book? Nobody. Okay, great. It's a great book about performing changes. The, let's say, main theme of this book is that we have this metaphor of us being a rider riding on an elephant through the path, right? Us is this our conscious mind. So we have to consciously know what we have to do and how to do this, right? And there's the elephant. The elephant is very strong, but difficult to control. So this is a metaphor of emotions. You have to take care of your emotions and people around you, like, for instance, your boss, right? You're telling your boss that we should do this and that, and it's logically sound and perfectly reasonable, but for some reason the boss doesn't want to do this, right? Maybe the emotions have to be taken into account. And the path is the environment, so we can also shape the environment to help us with this change. And this whole book is basically based around this metaphor and several key ideas that you can actually implement in dealing with changes. Then the second strategy, the acceptance. You have to realize that everything is in your mind, basically, right? You can have a project, 3 people in this project, and one is depressed, the second is quite okay, and the third person is just thrilled and excited. And they might be very similar, doing the same job in the same project, but they have different approach. Right? So the good news here is that you can process this in your head, basically, and change your thinking so that a project that is bad might not be that bad in the end, okay? Important thing is that people are sensitive to loss, right? If you are in a very good project, you go to a, let's say, good project for you, this is a disaster probably. It's quite worse for you. You don't feel good. But another person from a bad project that joins this good project is an upgrade for this person, right? So everything is subjective. And basically, with time and a little bit of processing, we can get rid of this problem. The second important idea is that we need to understand why things are done this way or another way. We might still don't like it after we get the explanation, but we will feel a little bit better with this, right? We'll get to this point in a few slides. There is, again, a book by Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, mostly about System 1, System 0 and System 1 or 1 or 2, I don't remember at this point. It's like a 600 pages book with a lot of cognitive errors that we do in our thinking and how to approach them. It's very useful. All right. So let's move to our huntings guide. Our monsters. Our first monster, there's this monster in a suit with a tie, right? It speaks strange language, and you are talking to this monster, the monster can't understand, right? So we have this miscommunication problem between so-called technology and so-called business. It stems from, it's called the curse of knowledge. That's the phenomenon you can see in small children. They assume that everyone else knows what they do, what they know, and feels how they feel, right? And we grow up from this to an extent, okay? And after some time, we still assume that other people more or less know what we talk about. There's a lot of three-letter shortcuts that we use, for instance, right? From technical standpoint, from business standpoint, and we can kind of match it, right? What we can employ here, first of all, analogies, right? If you have to describe something to business, try to find some good analogy. For instance, one of my DevOps is nagging me that we need to invest into the infrastructure to have good applications, and the business does not understand this. Okay, so maybe let's look at the IT system as if it was a house. You are buying a house. It's obvious that you need walls, right? So there's no wind in the house. You need a roof, so the water is not flowing at your head, right? And then we have foundations, right? This is something the house is built on. We kind of instinctively understand that we have to pay for those foundations as well when buying a house, right? Despite kind of like not using this directly. Similar with infrastructure and applications, like infrastructure is like a foundation for an application. And if you go from this analogy, maybe it will work, right? Let's remember that business is there for our clients to make money, and we are there for the business, basically, right? It's not that the business is there so that we have nice tasks and shiny technology that we can play with, right? This is, and obligation is on our side to make this communication flowing. Remember that the business, those are still people like us, and they have emotions, they have some fears, they have sometimes a lot of pressure behind them that we don't really see, right? And they are trying to shield us from this often. So remember about empathy, think about this other person, the standpoint, and be patient. And at some point, you will probably succeed. Our next monster encounter, let's say, we are going to the dungeon between down dimension. And there is this so-called the monolith. Monolith is like a piece of infrastructure that is kind of rusty and connected to everything, and it makes 99% of the money in our company usually. Right? And now we have two groups of people. One group doesn't want to touch it with a stick because it may fail. Right? The second group is going to save the world. We are going to do refactoring. We are going to upgrade the framework. We are going to fix stuff. And usually the second group is annoyed with the managers that managers won't let them do this. Right? They don't understand why. We have to fix this because something, and management doesn't understand. So question for you, who is your best friend when talking with business? Almost. There's a green icon on a desktop for this application. Microsoft Excel. In Microsoft Excel, you can insert some numbers, add them, multiply them, and see some results, right? So if you want to get something done with business, you have to know what's the value to be gained, right? For example, if you are a software developer and the build is slow for you, right? And you're annoyed because of this. You're going to the manager and saying, yeah, build slowly, it's annoying, right? Let's do something with this. What this manager is going to think, right? Okay, it's building slowly, he's annoyed, but yeah, that's life, right? What can you do about this? But if you get Microsoft Excel, right? And you calculate that, okay, I do this amount of builds daily times the amount of developers that we have, times the number of days in a year, right? If we invest, say, 3 days in a POC to somehow parallelize the build, speed it up, we can save 40 days in a year, right? You put this in Microsoft Excel, go to the manager, show it, and now we are talking, right? There is a business to be done. So remember, language of benefits is crucial. If you have some nice Agile, nice Scrum going, some burn down charts, you can sometimes observe that similar features are taking more and more time. So this is some base to discuss with management that, hey, maybe we should start paying our debt, technical debt, to kind of fix this, right? In one of our projects, we had this meeting every quarter when we are discussing some possible technical improvements. We are looking at the cost of them, at the impact, and naturally choosing some low-hanging fruits to be done. And we had some agreement with management that, hey, let's spend 5 or 10% time on what we identified as something that will fix our work. Then, when the disaster happens, there's your window, like when the production burned, when you had some data leak or something like this. There's usually this window when we are going to fix things so it doesn't happen again and doesn't annoy the management, right? And this is the moment when you can add a little bit to that scope. So if you are fixing this and this and this, let's also fix that thing, okay? It kind of works from experience, really. And strategy, so knowing why are we doing things, right? Sometimes you may be annoyed because of the technical debt or some other stuff, but if you knew that the CEO is going to sell the company in half a year, so he's not going to invest in technical debt right now because he needs to put some features to, get the best price and then spend the rest of his life on the tropical beach, right? Maybe not, okay, maybe it's not, still you have to work with this technical debt and bad code, but if you understand why, it's a bit helpful here. All right. In general, this is the barber shop, okay? This is the client. So imagine that you are this barber or hairdresser, and you have this client. The client is always right in the end, right? If a client comes to you and say he was going to another barber for 20 years, he was getting the same haircut every time, right? He comes to you and says that, okay, I want exactly the same haircut. You look at this client and yeah, it's maybe not the best idea because it won't fit the shape of his face, like it was popular like 50 years ago, whatever, right? And you have this urge to make things right? So do what's good for a client. But in the end, what is going to happen if you cut this client in a different way that he wants? He's probably not going to get back to you. He won't be happy, right? So we can do a lot of things, we can advise, but in the end, the client is always right. All right, the next monster that we can encounter. This is the puppeteer, the creature that wants to control you, pull all the strings, right? Micromanage you all the time. It's what to do with that, right? First of all, again, be mindful that this is a living person that has possibly a lot of pressure behind, right? A lot of emotions, a lot of fears. Maybe there is some politics. Maybe there are some, tribal wars or whatever. There might be a lot of stuff going on there. Maybe they are trying to somehow shield you from even greater pressure. Maybe some of this pressure spills, right, and manifests in trying to control you, or asking, when is it going to be ready? When is it going to be ready? Is it there yet? Is it there yet? Is it there yet? Right? Stuff like this. Generally, if you start in a new project, give it time, right? You have to show your competence, do some stuff, prove that you are, worthy, that you can be trusted, and probably the micromanagement will, let's say, slow down a little bit or even disappear at all. Then we have this mere exposure principle in psychology, right? If you just spend a little bit of time with somebody, you will usually get to like them. Not always, right? Sometimes it doesn't work, but if you invest in the relation with business, with your management, if you have the opportunity to go to the physical office, right, talk to them, maybe some integration with beer, etc., then it will most likely pay off. So this is worth it. And then again, remember, there are different types of company cultures. There are different cultures looking from geographical standpoint, right? If you work in a multinational company, sometimes you might think that, okay, the people from this country behave in a weird way, right? But this is basically just reality. We have those scales of different aspects of cultures. There is this book by Erin Meyer, The Culture Map. I have to add this here. The Culture Map. There's the Hofstede dimensions of cultures. And for instance, if there is high power distance, so the distance between the employee and the boss is high, and there is high uncertainty, low uncertainty tolerance, then it might correlate with a lot of micromanagement, right? From people from those countries or cultures or, types of companies. If you worked in startup and then you move to investment bank, it might be a shock for you, right? For instance. Okay, next we have this undead mummy, right? The mummy is very slow, not wrapped in those bandages, in these bureaucratic papers. If the mummy gets to you, it will also be very slow, right? So what to do with bureaucracy? You have to do a lot of approvals. You have to ask everyone about doing something, right? And it's crazy annoying. So first of all, again, who is your best friend when talking to business? Excel, Microsoft Excel. So be transparent about the cost, right? If you had to wait a month for approval, you couldn't fit something in a sprint, you were late, another team was waiting for this, right? They failed the sprint, right? Time is money. You can calculate, you can take the money that's the developer's cost, multiply this by 2 or 3 even, and this is our cost basically. You can work on trying to getting some responsibility, right? Instead of maybe asking for every virtual machine, maybe we can get some pool of virtual machines that we can take care of ourselves and work on this, right? So a little bit autonomy, maybe it's possible. Sometimes it takes some time. You can do this at the beginning of your project, but with time, in certain cultures, especially this works, that you need some time. You can anticipate that something will be needed, right? So you can even create some small task before the big task, do this in previous sprint, earlier sprint to get some access, for instance, that you think you're going to need. All right, then you can always escalate, you can, CC your manager. Again, in some cultures it works better. In some cultures you have to say that you are from the tribe of this guy, and then it opens door for you. Sometimes usually there's this whole like gray area that is under the official rules, right? Like usually in the bank, for instance, they said that you can't get access to production or to UAT or something, right? But if you go to this guy, he will give you access so you can work, right? So often you just need to know this guy, right? Or where to look for this person. And again, different cultures, different type of companies. This is especially important if you are early on your career path and you are changing from very agile, very maybe small company to a big financial corporation from Austria, for instance, right? Or Germany, something like this. This might be a shock for you, so be prepared. Okay, another monster. We have types of monsters that can basically turn you into stone, right? So you have this feeling that you don't develop your technical skills. You are just stuck in one place, working with the same technology over and over, and you don't learn anything. What can we do in those situations? You can find some business niche for yourself. Like I have another guy, DevOps. He comes to me and says that, okay, this is bad in a project, this is shitty, this is broken, they don't listen what I'm saying, but they have trains. I like trains. Trains are cool. Right? So maybe you just have to find your trains in a project or something that, gets you going, some kind of business part of the project. Right. Often people come to me and say that, okay, this and this is bad with a project. And when I ask, what have you proposed to change? They say they haven't, right? So, hey, nothing is going to happen by itself. If you need some changes, you have to initiate them, basically, right? You can think of yourself, as for technical people mostly, but you can think of yourself that You are not a developer, you are not a DevOps, you are not a Scrum Master or Agile coach, you are a person who solves business problems for customers. It can be done by writing code, by doing some configuration, by sending an email, or by talking with someone over coffee, right? And if you are missing some part of this technical, right, like coding or something, or coding in one particular language or newest framework or something like this, it helps, to think that we are just problem solvers, business problem solvers in the end. Sometimes we might use some old tools, right, or tools that we are not going to use in another project. But in this project, in this particular situation, for this client that is paying us, this is something that will solve their business problem. So it's good, right? We are successful in this way. When you have some difficulties in a project, right, especially this environmental difficulties, maybe talking with other people, making some decisions, think about this, that this is also something that develops you, right? It builds kind of like this armor around you, right? It helps you deal with some issues, and those skills are often quite transferable to real life, which is a bonus, right? If I'm arguing with my wife, for instance, those soft skills that are gained in a project might help me much more than, let's say, the intricacies of debugging the Kubernetes cluster, right? When the civilization falls in the end, we probably won't need Kubernetes clusters anymore, and those skills will be quite useful. Yeah, and remember that tools in general have expiration date, right? So at some point you might need them, later maybe not. Was it a wasted time? Not really. And on the other hand, we use some tools for 20, 30, 50 years, and it's still good, right? The blacksmith is, it's not nagging that he don't want to use this hammer anymore, right? This hammer is boring, but the hammer gets the job done, basically, so it's a good tool. All right, then at some point, you can encounter this nice space. This is like the 28 minutes. This is this nice space where you can find some stuff beside the project, right? So if you are not happy with a project, you can look for some additional roles, right? Maybe you can be a team leader, maybe you can be in recruitment, in mentoring, maybe helping some learning, teaching people, helping in any other way. And there are those 3 dots, so you can come out with your idea and try to implement this. Okay, maybe if I have just 2 minutes, I will skip this lack of purpose. The cacophony. Okay, this is a good one. Often if you have this situation that you can't really get your job done because everyone wants something from you, right? One idea how to deal with this, if you are in a Scrum, let's say, in Agile situation, you can have this sufferer of the week, called supporter of the week or the sufferer of the week, but there's this person that is not in a sprint, but is dedicated to, shielding the team from distractions and dealing with all those issues, looking at production, etc. And maybe you can look at the framework, so maybe not a Scrum, but Kanban, but there's a lot of people that know about this stuff better than me in this room, so I will not get into this. One nice idea from the slide is also that there is this magical window of 2 hours, right? For 2 hours, you can turn off your computer or your Teams or whatever communicator you are using, and nothing very bad should happen. Back in the day, before the pandemics, we were, in physical spaces. We were doing some meetings that took 2 hours. Nobody had a computer or a phone with Teams, and it was okay, right? So why not continue this currently, right? Usually you can just disappear for 2 hours and it should be okay still, right? If you're on this constant mode that you are answering all the time, you probably not get a very good constructive work. Okay, and just quickly, some few miscellanea. Choose your battles carefully, okay? Because you don't have probably resources to fight all of them, just focus on 1 or 2. Remember that what you are having now is just, it might be a bad time, it might be very stressful, and you might think that this is a disaster, the end of my career, etc. But in the end, this is just an experience. It will pass, right? You will change the company, change the boss, change the project. It will be okay, but the experience will stay with you, right? It will benefit you for the rest of your life, basically. And in the end, remember that you are not your work, right? It might be, I know, it is difficult. There's a lot of emotions. Sometimes we can't stop thinking about our work. But in the end, we should do what we are supposed to do, like, professionally. And at some point, we should be ready to say, okay, it's not my circus, not my monkeys anymore, right? You deal with this, right? So distance, otherwise we are all going to die. And last but not least, I know this is basic, but remember, don't burn bridges behind you. I know this looks great when you are leaving the company and there's a great explosion in the background. Everything looks good in front of an explosion, right? But you never know what is going to happen in your life. Who are you going to be working with in 1 year, 5 years, 20 years? What company? It's just not worth it. Sometimes you have this urge to write a very long email detailing what is wrong with whom, where, and what do you think about what is happening in the company. Just don't do this, or at least have the golden rule. Don't send this email the same day that you wrote it. Right? Just wrote it, give it a rest, look at this the next day, and there's a great chance that you think, okay, this is not a bad idea to press the send button. All right, so at least try to do this.